Hi everybody, it's the Patriot, the amazing, spectacular, terrific, the great one, the people's champion. Your host, and welcome back to the Patriot. I hope you like this video and hit that subscribe. What the hell's going on down in Washington? The host has been very patient about the JFK files and everything else, but when it comes to the JFK files, there's no reason that information should not be out. 60-something years since that horrible crime took place, and we should know everything that happened. There's one thing about this Epstein situation. The thing about Epstein is different because you have due process. Even though there are 254 victims attached to to those files, the thing that's have to keep in mind is that even though people have been named in that, there is a thing called innocent until proven guilty. And just because they've been named in it doesn't mean that they committed crimes. So let's just sort of keep that very fair. However, Epstein was a sex trader. He was a guy that introduced a lot of people to young children, and even though there were 254 names attached to that, I'm sure there are other names that are linked to that list. And probably a lot of them are not above ground, to be honest with you. So we must be patient when it comes to this. This is a major undertaking with this whole thing. It's very complicated situation because you got all kinds of people running around. There's a possibility that some of these documents have been destroyed. It is extremely complicated, and I don't even want to get into some of the details, some of the things I've heard. There are other things going on. This thing with P. Diddy, I've heard that a famous football player here in New York is a co-defendant. Odell Beckham Jr. is a co-defendant. I've not heard much from the media. The media has been silent on it. That popped up on X the other day. And some other things are popping up with that. Now, this thing with John F. Kennedy's assassination. I've been researching this, and you've been following me on this channel. You've been watching the videos. And I've talked a lot about who was involved. What happened that day is not as sort of straightforward. A lot of hands are in that stew. Only a government could have that kind of power to kill a head of state. Only a government could do that. An individual like Lee Harvey Oswald did not have the power to do that. I think the line from JFK, the movie, the Oliver Stone movie, says plausible deniability. And I think so many of them, I don't think it was a word that was out in the open, but I think that everybody knew what they meant when they said to go after him and take him down. And there's so many agencies in this government involved. It's a possibility of foreign countries involved. We do know, and this is what we learned from 4 years ago when President Trump released the last bit of documents, and that was that Lee Harvey Oswald had a tax return which said that he was an employee of the FBI, and that tax return was classified for 60 years. Okay, he was there in the Texas Book Depository building. We do know from, if you've been watching these videos, a convicted murderer named Mac Wallace was also in that building at some point, either that day or the day before or that morning. Because a partial print was found with his fingerprints on it in the crow's nest, in the sniper's nest, that famous spot. That's one of the things we've learned here on this channel, and do my own research too. And the Dallas police found that fingerprint. Mac Wallace back in the 50s murdered a man that was, get this is just crazy, that was having sex with Lyndon Johnson's sister. And he was murdered. He was a golf pro. He was also having sex with Mac Wallace's wife, but he didn't kill him apparently because of that. He killed him to send a message to Lyndon Johnson's sister. Johnson wanted to send a message to his sister. Instead of sending her a card, don't say nothing about my nefarious deeds in the 50s. He has the golf pro killed. And he was sort of the hitman of the Johnson group. Now, what's interesting now, from the other things I've learned, that George Bush Sr. was in Dallas that day. Memos from J. Edgar Hoover places him there. He even admitted when he was alive that he had been there that day in the Sheraton Hotel in Dallas. So the belief is that he had some involvement, possibly organizing the assassination. Also, his company, Zapata Oil Company, is also the name of Operation Zapata is also the name of what became known as the Bay of Pigs incident. So, and he was the one that recruited all the Cubans to go into Cuba back in 1962 or 1961, excuse me. And we've learned other things, that Johnson was a bad guy. Lyndon Johnson was a really bad guy. He was basically a criminal. He was basically a criminal. He was basically a guy that was in with the Dallas Mafia. He had connections to the Chicago Mafia. There's so many connections to the Dallas Mafia and the Chicago Mafia to the murder. Jack Ruby also worked for Lyndon Johnson. He also worked for the Chicago Mafia. He ran the casinos in New Orleans, which amazingly enough, we know that Oswald was in New Orleans at one point, and that he met with him. We also I've learned also that the Oswald family, there were two other members that were in government that were part of the CIA. I believe a sister, or not sister, maybe his mother, or an aunt, and of course one of his brothers. So the thing with JFK is very complicated, because you got all these people in there, then there's all plausible deniability. We also know, if you watch the Zapruder film tells you, if you watch it, that there was a stand down, okay? Because the only time any of the Secret Service agents react to Kennedy being shot, not one Secret Service agent reacts to protecting Kennedy. Not one. But what's interesting is that the one Secret Service agent that was there to protect Mrs. Kennedy reacted when she jumped on the back of the car, grabbed the president's brain. So that tells you that there was a stand down, that the agent that was supposed to protect the president, the one that was supposed to protect the president, wasn't there. So that tells you that there was a stand down. Also, the man that owned the Texas Book Depository was good friends with Lyndon Johnson. And not only that, but he was also a major contributor to Lyndon Johnson's political career in Texas. And after the murder was over, he had the frame taken out of the sniper's nest, and he put it in his living room as a trophy. These are rough characters that we're dealing with in Dallas. Okay? Now, Mrs. Kennedy had, and this is what we learned from the last time these things dropped, these files dropped. We learned that Mrs. Kennedy asked the French to find out who did it. They came back to her and said they told her the most likely candidate was Lyndon Johnson. During this time, also there was a memo given to J. Edgar Hoover that the Soviet Union had also done an investigation, because they didn't want to be blamed for this assassination, and they too came up with the same conclusion, that it was Lyndon Johnson as well. All right. And this, like I said, has had a ripple effect on our country, and that's why it's so important that the JFK files be revealed and let the truth have its day. You know, it's like that line from The Dark Knight Rises, let the truth have its day. I mean, that's enough is enough. There's nothing wrong with it. The best thing that can happen is that the truth comes out and we all know what's going on. There's also these rumors of Israel being involved. That might be the thing that's holding these files from coming out. Like, for instance, we know that Kash Patel has seen it. He said he's seen it. He said nothing different that he wasn't expecting. All the things we know, we already know. But I get the sense that it's something that there's sort of one point connects to another point. It's like a domino effect. And the domino effect is basically witnesses. There were witnesses to the crime. Okay? Now, according to witnesses, from the things I've heard, is that people placed Mac Wallace in the sixth floor of the building. Okay? Witnesses said that they saw him. Although there's some kind of like dispute on that. And there were witnesses that said there was somebody on the grassy knoll. Witnesses disappeared. Witnesses got killed in car wrecks. One car accidents on a regular basis. A lot of people got killed. A lot of people died that witnessed the murder, witnessed the assassination, that were witnesses there. Now, I was thinking about this today. One of the things you do, if you're trying to send a message to everybody else, is when you want to kill a head of state, you want a big stage for it. You want to send a message to everybody that if we could take this guy out, we could take anybody else out. And that tells you how dangerous this situation is, talking about it even today. They did this in broad daylight. They did this 12 o'clock in the afternoon. So this wasn't a situation they did it in the middle of the night. Excuse me. One situation they did this in the middle of the night. They did this in broad daylight. The same thing they did with President Trump. They did to him, they shot him at 5:30 in the afternoon. They want people to see this. They want to shock people. They want to scare people. This we know, JFK scared a lot of people. And shocked people a lot. Okay? Well, the difference between Trump and President Kennedy is Kennedy, obviously, he was a sitting duck. By the grace of God, President Trump did not get killed. Within centimeters of his brain. That tells you that God is watching. God is protecting him. Clearly that day it was his time to go. That day. They've been playing on the cable, believe it or not, I watch cable. This movie with Jackie Kennedy, starring Natalie Portman, and you see her going through just the grief, the grief after the hours and the days after. It's just horrible to watch it. How like shell shocked she is, and how she was able to get through it. It's just incredible to watch this movie, even just reenactment. How did she get through that? I mean, she had his brains over her. She had blood over her face, blood over her body, blood over her clothes. Horrible. But again, like I mentioned, we need to find out, because that seems to be the central point. Everything went downhill with the country. Because then after that, we got to Vietnam. That's its own separate story that has a lot to do with this situation. Then we get President Nixon in, and Nixon gets basically kicked out because he pissed off the deep state about this thing with Kennedy, according to Tucker Carlson. And it was framed by the deep state. But there's a lot, it's sort of, and of course it affects the Gerald Ford presidency as well, because he was on the Warren Commission that doctored some of the evidence, the autopsy evidence. We also know that he had kicked down the road all the involvement of CIA assassinations that they did in the 60s and 70s. So he's a bad guy too. And of course, President Bush there in Dallas has to be questioned and has to be asked the right questions and get the answers. And I think some of this information is why we haven't seen it. Plus, there's also this sort of sense that Israel had some hand in this as well. So there's so many hands involved in this, as well as the Federal Reserve and the bankers abroad. There's so much going on here. And the Chicago mob, everybody's to blame for this. All the bad people that we're fighting with now, they were involved with that back then. So Scary times then, scary times now, but we'll get through this, and God's with us, I think, hopefully. I don't think he wants to see this world get just destroyed because of these people. But thank you for watching this video. I'll keep you up to date as much as I can on what's going on with the situation with Kennedy and on Epstein. Again, Epstein's all about due process. We need to give this time. And I think we'll get the answers that we want. But like I said, innocent until proven guilty. There's a lot of guilty people here, and it's an extremely complicated case. It's not straightforward because you got so much going on with it. Well, thank you for watching this video. And of course, please subscribe to the Patriot Hut. I'll see you later.